Welcome everybody to this webinar presentation on wash infrastructures, wash in conformity with the environment, and sustainable phase 2 climate hazards. And this is proposed by RunWash project. Before starting, we're going to start with a brief presentation. I'm going to start with myself. I am leader, and it's a pleasure for me to be a governmental environmental compliance specialist within RunWash. And in this presentation, we also have Fanny Lurakutini-Ryan, who is the Senior Wash System Specialist of the project. Good morning. Good afternoon, Fanny. And then we have a member of the coordination team of the project in collaboration with the private technical partners who are Bushproof and Santanjan. And with the SHIC, we call manager, investor, and constructor. So we also have the local authorities. Our principal role in this project is to ensure the respect of technical norms and environmental norms of the infrastructures invested by RunWash. It is worth mentioning that this intervention is translated into English. We have Christian Toumarielson, who is part of us, and he's our interpreter during this intervention. Good afternoon, and thank you, Christian. We also have Claudia Andiana-Funyanan, who is our host of today. So if you have some remarks and recommendations, and they are always welcome, and thank you to send them to Claudia via email, and she's going to share her mail address on the chat box to facilitate the communication. So thank you so much, Claudia. So that is the presentation. It's all about. To start with this webinar, we're going to talk about the modality and the function of this webinar. We'll be together here for 1 hour and a half, and we're going to proceed this way. There will be a short introduction of the RunWash project, and then we're going to share the presentation with my colleagues here, and the last part would be devoted to Q&A. So as we are in a webinar mode, I would like to invite you to write your recommendation, feedback, and question on the chat box. And you can also download this session via the website. And all the tools that we're going to share during this intervention would be available on our website as well. So a few words on RunWash project. We have access to rural zones for new opportunities in WASH, to train teams of composed of different consortium members, CRS, CARE, Bushproof, Santanjan, WaterEd, with the objective to improve equitable access and sustainable access to water surfaces, to maximize the impact on health and nutrition, as well as the protection of the environment. For that sake, in the frame of the water surface provision, we put in place some infrastructures in the 7 regions of interventions. And those actions contributed to the reaching the strategic development of the project. So today, via these interventions, we're going to try to explain why to put in place infrastructures respecting the conformity and how RANWASH rendered those infrastructures in conformity with the norms. So for that, I'd like to invite you. For that, we're going to share how we adapted those infrastructures. First of all, we're going to share what we are doing. We can also share what's happening during the conception phase without forgetting the insurance on the quality of water. We're going to explain as well the working phase and the exploitation phase, what's going on during those phases. The objective of this intervention is to share the different approaches, the best practices that RANWASH has adopted to respect the environmental norms, but also to respond to the needs of the beneficiaries. So, why those different phases? I'm going to share and work on this, because my colleague can also give more details on the question of how. So to implement this phase, we have to base our work on a reference document, since we are a project funded by USAID, and the mission of USAID is to advocate on sustainable development. Our objective is to ensure that the project is respectful to environments and their sustainability, and more especially the USAID is legally required by the federal courts to apply those environmental norms for the overall projects, programs, and activities, and that's why we refer to those key documents. And then we define common criteria for the selection of the communes and the communities, to have an idea on the different economical steps, stages, the volunteer, the willingness, the ability to pay, as well as the availability of water resources. In this phase, we constitute the register of the enterprises and the communes who are accepting the market-based approach and to pay for services and the principle of PPP win-win. During the second phase, which is the phase of conception, RANWASH carried out some technical studies to ensure that the infrastructures to put in place are respecting the technical norms, respecting the national standards. And after that, we include some environmental studies to make sure that those infrastructures are placed where there is no incidence on historical or cultural places or social places. Also, to make sure that those infrastructures do not have negative impact on the ecosystem or the fauna or the endemic flora, or to make sure that those infrastructures are implemented in a humid zone. So we did some environmental studies to make sure that those infrastructures that we put in place are not placed in a very gliding sites or a very skeptical area, for example. It is also very important to make sure that the contract of delegation are known by the owner of those watersheds. So the documents on the elements for decision making. Regarding the water quality, Ranwash engaged to distribute quality water, and that means that the water distributed by those to be placed infrastructures should not have negative impacts on health. The water should be good looking water, and that's why Ranwash committed to put in place infrastructures to ensure the distribution of water in good in good quantity and good quality based on the existing norms. The works phase, Ranwash is providing support to the communities via the constructions of new infrastructures that is adopted to better sensitize and to inform them about the regulatory texts and the rules and the procedure of usage of those infrastructures. We also have discussions on the mitigation measures of the impact of the implementation of those infrastructures. And during this phase, we organize activities for sensitization to work on behavior change in terms of public health and the use of drinking water. So we inform and train the local authorities on the respect of the existing rules on the contracts of constructions. Moreover, we have a systematic monitoring of the works and to monitor to assess the respect for the environmental resources. So we monitor the use of uniform equipment of protection. It is also very important to have some weekly monitoring of the evolution of the works. During the exploitation phase, that we can say the management phase, the management and the maintenance phase. In this phase, Ranwash has done some systematic monitoring of the implemented infrastructures to make sure that those infrastructures are remaining in conformity with the environment and the sustainable norms. So to maintain the environmental requirements, there are the responsibilities of the managers to do some reporting on the uses of those infrastructures, and more especially, they have the obligation to do some improving works on those infrastructures. And it's the responsibilities to fence those infrastructures to protect them, and during this exploitation phase as well, the respect to the environmental respect in the watershed is translated by the collaboration with the community, and the users of those systems. So they have to ensure reforestation activities, to inform the communities and the users of the lands on the protection of the watersheds, and to inform them about the management plan as well. So I'm going to stop there for my intervention. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Now I'd like to give the floor to my colleague to intervene and explain the next step of this webinar. Tayi, over to you. Thank you, Lina. On this second part, we're going to share documents and tools used by the project from the preparation phase. Actually, USAID is taking into consideration the environmental risks to strengthen resilience of the community, and the assessment process of this risk is IEE, or Initial Environmental Examination. USAID is using IEE to assess the environmental conditions for a project, a program, a project activity, and to assess the potential impact of those activities on the environment and the community. IEE is also taking into account the measures of mitigation to reduce and to solve, to compensate those negative impact, and the use of this tool is helping us to make decisions, sustainable decisions, related to the Article 22, line 16. IEE is a previsible environment process to provide an expertise on decision making related to environmental impact. So this is to document the elements needed for decision making, be it negative or negative, and all the different types of solutions proposed. IEE is also used to categorize information, to propose interventions via examination via IEE. So on the other hand, to rationally manage water, which is important, essential to the survival of the human race. The water code is stipulating the conservation of the water resources, the provision of drinking water and wash surfaces, the funding of wash sector, and the organization of the water sector. So the water code is touching not only water but sanitation also, and hygiene. Finally, the choice of the communes are defined by those criteria which were set by order of importance, number of population, accessibility, and the existence of APS and APT studies, and the amount of investment and the cost per beneficiary, the interest for PPP, and the existence of healthcare facilities and schools, and the percentage of OTF villages, and the pertinence of the PPP and PPP plus, and also the intercommunality. So all these reference documents can be downloaded by you flashing on the QR code you can see on the PowerPoint, or you can also visit our website and to download and have a look at those documents. the other key documents for the conception phase, for all types of construction, the before project studies is very important, i.e. In the summary of the process, we need to divide the projects in a list of activities and evaluate, assess the impact of those activities on the environment, to also identify the conditions, the measures to mitigate the impact, and then the APS, which is detailing the global way of constructing the infrastructures. This should be provided with a planning of the work, a period of the project, and APD is going further. In the APD, the elements and the characteristics are fixed, are defined, like the surface, the occupied surface, the choice of the used materials, the full description of the works, and the sequencing, the general aspect of the accomplishment, the building, the technical notice and judiciary texts, but also budgeting, a detailed budgeting, and the CRM, or climate risk management, the management of risk related to climate, and the meteorological effects can have impact into the development. USAID has developed a tool to manage those risks, to make sure to protect those infrastructures. This process is documented in the conformity process, environmental conformity process, and then the EMMP, or environmental mitigation monitoring plan, or plan de suivi et d'atténuation des impacts environnementaux, is defining the condition of IEE on the general conditions. This would help define the indicators to monitor the implementation, but also to establish the calendar with the responsible of the site. The ESF, or the environmental screening form, is a form for environmental examination associated with construction works proposed to improve the infrastructures on WASH. So this is documenting the impact, the potential impact, environmental impacts, and the measures of mitigation to enable RANWASH and USAID to evaluate the impact, the probable impact of those constructions works, and to propose some mitigation and a plan for short term. All these are constituted in the ESF as a whole. For the validation of the studies, as you can see on the slides, there's a process before the community is can use the infrastructures, because the validation of those studies are passing through different stages. The site plan is validated at the regional level with the APS, which is validated by Bushproof or Standard Jan, and which should be validated at the regional level by technicians, by the members of the consortiums and the regional directorates, local. the GRSP or the regional directors of the national education, but also at the level of the communities and the communities. And after the validation of those study document, we start with the reduction, the elaboration of ESF for validation before the starting of the constructions, and the procurement can be launched after the validation of the APD. Ranwash opted for limited restricted tender called for application, and the result is also validated by the donors. And once all the documents are in conformity and validated, and then we can work on the contract, land the contract of construction, and start the works. And throughout the life cycle of the project, we practice 113 APS and 83 APD, and we can say that most of the necessary documents have been elaborated, and the list of those APS and APD done are available. You can also have a look at them. You can have a look at those documents on the website. It's also very important that the ASF were done based on climate conditions for the targeted regions, and we can also use them as a reference document if you want information on the management of climate risks and the measures of mitigations to be adopted in the targeted region. For water quality insurance, Brainwash concentrated in a few parameters described by key reference text, and which is in conformity with the different existing texts, and those parameters can define the identity of the water and can have a direct impact on the health of the users. Actually, as for the identity of the water, we have a parameter on the pH, the turbidity, the temperature are parameters to be assessed on the APD and at the beginning of the constructions, but also at the end of the constructions. We also have the ESF, the water linked to those parameters, which are more advanced for the APD phases before use, but also during the exploitation phase. It is to be noted that at the end of the phase of the construction of the infrastructures, the actors are has to evaluate and certify the quality of the water before the exploitation of the system. This is to allow the users to be sure of the quality of the water. And during the water supply, the manager of the water supply systems has to verify all these parameters. The manager should do some assessments of those parameters linked to the quality of the water, depending on the contract of management, and more especially during the season changes. It is also very important to bring some specifications that these parameters have are related to the treatment of the drinking water supply, to identify the types of treatments needed for some sites. For example, it is very important to identify those lands with lots of iron, and the treatments would be different. Above all, this project provided different tools to the managers for this latter to continue working on the maintenance. All those information can be seen and available on water quality insurance plan, which is a document available on the website. During the achievements and the monitoring of the works, which is the works phase, it is important to train the local authorities, the leaders, on the importance of the works, so that they can respect the environmental norms and the technical descriptions written in the register. It is also important to take into account the security measures for the enterprise workers and the local communities after this training, which was materialized by guide documents and which are available on the sites. And before the starting of the works, an introductory meeting is set to inform the communities and to set the roles and responsibilities of each actors, but also for the respect of social and environmental measures, and to lead to the best at those construction work. Weekly meeting is set at the workplace, and which is materialized by a report to be sent to the different stakeholders. And at the end of the work, the reception is organized with the different stakeholders, like the commune, the deputy manager, who is the representative of the directorates of WASH, and the representatives of the different entities, like representative of the public health and that of the national education, the manager, the representative of the beneficiaries, but also the member of the Round WASH consortium. Now, we're going to video sharing an idea, like the case of Muraran Krom. You can have a look, view this video that is available on the website. But for the exploitation phase, we're going to have a look at different types of infrastructures implemented by the project, and in the end, for the reporting and the documentation, we're going to show work on the websites and show you where you can find those documents and download them. So first, to secure the captage and the treatment units, but also the watershed, which is very important. We can see the catchment point in Tuatani, and the perimeter of immediate protection of the resources. Immediate perimeter is fenced, and those slope landscapes are slope landscaping with stones, and for the community did some reforestation to fight against the erosion and to increase the water catching in the lands, and all these are stipulated by communal regulations, but also the activities are in those areas are we have different measures of protections, and the embellishing of the systems, which is representing 5% of the investments. We can see on the slide the photo before and after. This is a hybrid dam with half on lands and the second half on ferro cement, and this is a hybrid dam of a full point, which is with a height of 4-meter height, and it is a span of 2.4 hectares and 43,000 of cubic meters, and this is showing the unit of treatment on the Ombudsman site. This is rectangular and monolithic in ferrous cement, can produce up to 15 meters of cuber, and can produce considerably more water with some horizontal stones, and these were used in the pre-treatment block, and this is using a chloration system with the electrochlorator from a solar energy. The injection of the chlor is done with a pump, as you can see on the picture. And here we can see the reservoir, the tank in Mularam Chrome with filters on an ecoidal form. So this is specifying the ferry cement because this technique is very interesting to use. Moreover, the ferrous cement is a system of construction using some specific materials like metal or metallic fibers or steels, space steels, as you can see in the pictures. In the end, we can see a monoblock which is for water supply and focused on wash, sanitation, and hygiene, and composed of water points with 3 pumps, showers with volumetric tanks, and a place where we can hand washing facilities, latrine, and also a laundry space for 2 or 4 people. And this monoblock in the picture was set in Antuna Bay. Now, let's navigate in the website to have a look at the different tools we mentioned by clicking on the link you can see on the slide. Now we are on the website, and you can see the different information and the news resources for the infrastructures documents. We have to enter into PPP, and we have WASH infrastructures in conformity to environment and resilience to climate hazards. By clicking on that, you will be directed to the tools and the documents that we plan to share. For example, 2.2.2 on the detailed prior to the projects, and by clicking on this APD, you have the list of the APD, the 83 APDs that we covered, and you can download and use those documents. So for the other tools, you can click on the documents, then you can have access to those documents. On this, let's go back to our presentation. Let's go back to our presentation. We shared the tools and the strategies we used during the project. And to finish the presentation, if you cannot be lost, and if you have any requirements, we encourage you to improve those tools and to continue your way for you to explore new horizons in this WASH sector. So to finish, thank you, Lina, Claudia, and Christian. I'd like to thank you because you were very good participants, and you can share your comments and your recommendations. If you have tools that you'd like to share that you can find useful, that we can also upload to feed the database, then do not hesitate on that sake. I'd like to thank you, and let's move on to the Q&A. Thank you. Okay, I can hear you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was very interesting. Can we have the presentation. Can you share the presentation to us? Thank you. Of course, thank you. The presentation can be downloaded via the website from next week. Like all the documents that we used, you can also pick them up from the Runwash website. Thank you. Thank you. There is a question on the list of APD that we could not cover by the project, that the project could not cover. So we did 83 APD studies for the 115 APS, and by navigating on the website you can see where Runwash the 250 communes, and you can also share with you the list of the communes which do not possess any APD studies. Thank you. Can you hear me? What I wanted to say is we did some APD, but we do not have an APS. And how is that? Some of those APD studies were covered, but there were no works. They are also available. We can share with you the list of the sites, because most of them were sent, were sold by two different enterprises during and the remaining APDs which did not result into works are still available, and we can exploit them. Thank you. If there's no more questions, we're going to close this session. I'd like to reiterate my gratitude